The sun dips below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The forest stands as a silhouette against the fading light, a silent guardian of the secrets it holds. Shadows grow long in the woods, stretching like dark fingers across the forest floor. The once familiar paths now seem mysterious and foreboding. A campfire crackles, casting dancing light on the faces of those gathered around. The flames flicker and sway, creating an ever-changing tapestry of light and shadow. Stories of laughter and fun are exchanged, the warmth of camaraderie filling the air. Laughter echoes through the trees, a stark contrast to the encroaching darkness. But when darkness fully descends, the mood changes. The forest seems to close in, the night air growing colder, and the once comforting fire now casts eerie shadows. Someone mentions the word ghost. Eyes widen, and a hush falls over the group. The playful atmosphere is replaced by a sense of anticipation and unease. The fire crackles again, but this time, everyone falls silent, leaning in, ready to hear tales that chill you to the bone. The storyteller's voice drops to a whisper, drawing everyone closer. These are the ghost stories of the campsite, tales of spirits and specters that haunt the woods. Each story is more terrifying than the last, leaving the listeners on edge. These are the stories whispered in hushed tones, passed down from generation to generation. They are the legends that keep the campfire tradition alive, each retelling adding a new layer of fear. They are warnings of what lurks in the shadows, of things that go bump in the night. The forest is alive with unseen eyes, and every rustle of leaves sends a shiver down your spine. Gather around the fire, dear reader, if you dare. Listen closely, for these stories are not just tales but warnings. They remind us of the thin veil between our world and the unknown. But be warned, once you hear these tales, you may never look at a campsite the same way again. The forest will always hold a piece of your fear, a reminder of the night when darkness fell on campsite lore. Two young friends, Billy and Tommy, were camping with their families. Their tents stood side by side under the vast night sky. One night, long after their parents had fallen asleep, Tommy heard a strange noise. It was a whisper, soft and low, coming from just outside his tent. "Tommy," it seemed to say. He sat up, his heart pounding. "Billy, is that you?" he whispered back, his voice trembling. But there was no answer, only the sound of the wind rustling the leaves outside. Just when he was about to dismiss it as his imagination, he heard it again. "Tommy." This time it was closer, right outside his tent flap. Tommy froze, too scared to even breathe. Deep in the woods, by a secluded lake, a lone figure stood casting a fishing line into the still water. He hadn't caught anything all day, but something kept him there, a feeling he couldn't shake off. As the sun began to set, casting an eerie glow on the water, he felt a cold presence behind him. He turned slowly, his blood turning to ice. Standing there was a young woman, her clothes soaked through, her face pale and ghostly. "Beware," she whispered, her voice raspy and weak. "The lake, it takes... Her voice trailed off, and she vanished into thin air. The fisherman, terrified, packed up his gear and ran, never looking back. A group of friends were sharing scary stories around the campfire, the flickering flames casting eerie shadows on their faces. When one of them, Sarah, mentioned a local legend, the vanishing camper. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and everyone leaned in closer. Legend had it that years ago, a young man had gone camping alone in these very woods and was never seen again. The forest seemed to hold its breath as she spoke. His campsite was found abandoned, his tent ripped apart, and his belongings scattered everywhere. It was as if he had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a scene of chaos. Some said he had been attacked by a wild animal, perhaps a bear or a mountain lion, drawn by the scent of food. Others whispered of something more sinister, a dark presence that roamed the woods, preying on lone campers. As Sarah finished the story, a strange feeling washed over the group. The once comforting warmth of the fire now felt ominous. They heard a twig snap in the darkness beyond the firelight. The sound was sharp and clear, cutting through the night like a knife. Their laughter died in their throats as they stared into the shadows, their eyes wide with fear. The darkness seemed to close in around them, their hearts pounding in their chests. Each beat echoed in their ears, amplifying the silence that followed. The story, once just a tale, suddenly felt all too real. The forest around them seemed alive with unseen eyes, watching, waiting. The fire crackled, sending sparks into the air, but it did little to dispel the growing sense of dread. They huddled closer together, seeking comfort in each other's presence. Whispers filled the air as they exchanged nervous glances, each wondering if the legend of the vanishing camper was more than just a story. The moonlight filtered through the trees, casting an eerie glow on the forest floor. Every rustle of leaves, every distant hoot of an owl seemed to carry a hidden threat. They decided to stay close to the fire, its light their only shield against the unknown lurking in the darkness. The night stretched on, filled with tension and the unspoken fear that they might not be alone. Deep within the heart of the campsite stood an ancient totem pole, its weathered surface carved with strange and unsettling figures. The totem pole had stood there for centuries, a silent sentinel watching over the forest, its origins shrouded in mystery and legend. Locals claimed it was cursed, a relic of a forgotten tribe that once roamed these woods. The tribe was said to have vanished under mysterious circumstances, leaving behind only this eerie monument as a testament to their existence. They said that those who dared to touch the totem pole would be struck by misfortune, their lives plagued by bad luck and eerie occurrences. Stories of strange accidents, sudden illnesses, and inexplicable events were whispered among the locals, adding to the totem pole's sinister reputation. One night, a group of teenagers, emboldened by alcohol and their own sense of invincibility, decided to test the legend. They had heard the stories but dismissed them as mere superstition, a challenge to be conquered. They snuck into the woods, their laughter echoing through the trees, and gathered around the totem pole. The air was thick with anticipation and a hint of fear, but they pushed it aside, determined to prove the legend wrong. One by one, they took turns touching it, their laughter growing louder with each touch. Each contact with the totem pole seemed to embolden them further, their bravado masking the unease that gnawed at the edges of their minds. They left the woods that night, feeling invincible, unaware of the darkness they had just invited into their lives. Little did they know, the curse of the totem pole had been awakened, and their lives would never be the same again. The forest, once a place of adventure and laughter, would soon become a haunting reminder of their fateful encounter with the cursed totem pole. It was the dead of night, and Emily lay awake in her sleeping bag listening to the sounds of the forest outside. Suddenly, she heard it, the distinct sound of footsteps slowly circling her tent. Thump, thump, thump. They were heavy footsteps, like those of a large man. Her heart pounded in her chest, her breath catching in her throat. She lay perfectly still, too terrified to even move. The footsteps continued their relentless circle, coming closer, then moving away, then closer again. Emily squeezed her eyes shut, willing the sound to stop, but it continued until dawn broke, leaving her shaken and terrified. Two young campers, lost and disoriented, stumbled through the darkness, their flashlight beam cutting a weak path through the thick undergrowth. They had wandered away from their campsite hours ago and now found themselves hopelessly turned around. As they pushed their way through the trees, they noticed something strange. Two glowing eyes watching them from the darkness. The eyes were high off the ground, too high for any animal they could think of. They froze, their blood running cold as they stared into the darkness, unable to make out the creature to which they belonged. The eyes seemed to follow their every move, their eerie glow sending shivers down their spines. The old campground had a dark history, one that locals spoke of only in hushed whispers. It was said to be haunted by the restless spirit of a young girl who had drowned in the nearby river many years ago. Legend had it that she had been swimming with her friends when a strong current swept her away. Her body was never found. Campers over the years had reported strange occurrences, disembodied laughter echoing through the trees, equipment mysteriously moved, and the feeling of being watched. Some even claimed to have seen the ghostly apparition of the young girl, her wet hair plastered to her face, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. The old ranger, a grizzled man with eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of the forest itself, leaned in close to the campfire, his voice low and serious. "There's a rule we have in these woods," he said, his gaze sweeping over the faces of the young campers huddled around the fire. "Never, ever turn back." He paused, letting the silence hang heavy in the air. Some say it's bad luck, that it invites the spirits of the forest to follow you home. Others say it's something far worse. He leaned back, his eyes twinkling in the firelight. Whatever you do, if you hear something calling your name in the darkness, don't turn back. Just keep walking. Panic surged through him as he realized he was lost. He had been exploring the woods beyond the campsite, venturing further and further into the dense undergrowth, when he realized he couldn't find his way back. The trees seemed to press in on him, their branches reaching out like skeletal fingers trying to grab him. He stumbled through the undergrowth, his heart pounding in his chest, his breath catching in his throat. Every shadow seemed to hold a lurking danger. Every rustle of leaves sent shivers down his spine. He was trapped in a nightmare, the once familiar woods now a menacing labyrinth he couldn't escape. The campfire has dwindled, the embers glowing like malevolent eyes in the darkness. The stories have been told, each one more chilling than the last. The silence of the night is broken only by the crackle of the dying fire and the sound of your own heartbeat. You glance over your shoulder, your mind playing tricks on you, seeing shadowy figures lurking in the darkness. The ghost stories of the campsite linger in your mind, their chilling details seared into your memory. As you finally drift off to sleep, you can't help but wonder, are they just stories or are they warnings? And what lurks in the shadows, just beyond the reach of the firelight, waiting for you to let your guard down? The haunting continues.